I'm gonna go back to my world now.
Crunchy Power Henshin. Mahou Shoujo, aka Magical Girls. From Moon, Sakura, Cure, Madoka, and that dude, magical girls are a staple to anime, like peas in a pod, and jelly to a donut. Like most famous anime genres, magical girl, or Mahou Shoujo, has a storied history, where isekai has its roots in 18th century Japanese folktale of my man, the humble fisherman Urashima Rampo, visiting a magical undersea dragon palace after saving a turtle, and Western literature that made its way to Japan, like Alice in Wonderland and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Mahou Shoujo has more recent, but no less culturally important origin in popular folktale, the beloved 1960s American sitcom Bewitched. Maybe? That's the popular narrative at least. But Fujio Akasuka's manga, Hitsumi no Ako-chan, considered the first true magical girl work in Japan, first appeared in Shueisha's Ribbon magazine in 1962, beating the air date of Bewitched by 2 years. If you haven't heard of Fujio Akasuka, he also created these 6 guys. It is the story of a girl who is given a magical mirror by a resident of the Mirror Kingdom that lets her transform into basically whatever she wants when she looks into it and speaks the magic words, which she uses to get in all sorts of comedic hijinks. Ako-chan established a few lasting tropes for the magical girl genre as the origin of the magical girl accessory, magic incantation, and at least the idea of transformation. Ako-chan would use the mirror and chant "Mirror, mirror," followed by the name of whatever she wanted to turn into backward. Also beating the famous Western magical girl Zatanna to the punch by 2 years, I'll also give Ako-chan the first talking magical girl mascot animal. Shipona is basically just a normal cat, but during some cat-focused episodes, we learned that cats can talk to each other in fluent Japanese. So there you go. Despite Ako-chan's influence, we may still have Elizabeth Montgomery's wiggling nose to thank for bringing magical girls to our TV screens. Bewitched was popular in Japan. I'm talking paying for the lead actress to headline in Japanese cookie commercials, remaking the series almost 40 years later with Japanese actors under the title Okusama wa Major, and having the famous voice actor Mamoru Miyano act out an episode playing all the characters. So yeah, it's popular. Although beaten to print, the 1966 manga Sally the Witch by Mitsuteru Yokoyama, another famous mangaka who is often credited as the creator of the mecha genre, but we'll leave that for another video, received an anime adaptation this same year to become the first magical girl anime. Yokoyama specifically cited Bewitched as his inspiration for Sally. The manga might also be the first reverse isekai in Japanese media, Sally being from a magical kingdom separate from our world, but became so enamored with Earth that she decided to visit. Sally was basically a slice of life with her mischievous shape-shifting frenemy and fake younger brother Kabu, or Cub, using his magic to commit all sorts of heinous criminal acts that Sally has to resolve. It was also popular and possibly the very first TV anime created specifically to appeal to younger girls. Sally and Samantha Steffens set the stage for Ako-chan to get her own TV adaptation 3 years later. Jokes on Sally, by 1969 they were making color anime, so the entirety of Ako-chan got the full Technicolor treatment. Good job, Ako-chan. Over the course of several prints and the anime, Ako-chan underwent some serious changes. By the time the anime rolled around, her mirror had become a magical compact, which had that sparkly bejeweled appearance you know was designed to be sold as a plastic toy. These two anime probably sound strange to those familiar with the common tropes of modern day Mahou Shoujo anime, but, well, technically they weren't. The term Mahou Shoujo hadn't even entered common lingo yet, and the emerging genre of girls with magical powers was called Majoko, which also means magical girl. Early Majoko era magical girl series were defined by the misadventures of Sally and Ako as comedic, mostly episodic slice of life anime which would carry the genre for decades before a certain series changed the genre forever. More on that later. Also, both Sally and Ako, as well as almost all magical girl anime before the 80s, were produced by Toei Animation, which is referred to by magical girl scholars as the Toei period, during which the Cat in the Hat would hold a stranglehold over the genre until its dethroning by another popular animation studio. Toei's next project was Maho no Mako-chan, a loose adaptation of Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid that premiered in 1970, beating Disney's by a cool 19 years. I got my eye on you, Walt. The mermaid Mako-chan takes a trip from her sea kingdom to the surface where she spots a hot guy and decides the land might be a nice place to spend some time. She makes a deal with a witch to swallow one of her own tears and rip her tail in half to make a pair of legs, and then gets adopted by an old Japanese man, his twin sons, and their pet bear. One key difference between Mako and many magical girls of her era was her age. While most of the magicos of the time looked like they were pushing 12, Mako appeared to be in her late teens, and there's a lot of action and fatal car crashes in Mako-chan. I guess Toei was, trying out something new, I guess. Not sure I'd even call Mako a magical girl, except her dad does give her a magic pendant that is just like a plot device to pull her out of trouble sometimes. It's like a get out of jail card. That's a Monopoly reference. Mako-chan was also an anime original production. No source material it was directly based on beyond some inspiration from Mr. Hans Andersen, which makes Mako the first original magical girl. By now, magical girls had built enough of a profile that a certain someone who couldn't help dabbling in whatever media is most du jour at the moment had to get in on that action. That someone is Osamu Tezuka, Nagada Manga. Nagada Manga made the flagship anime of his newly minted Tezuka Productions, a magical girl series, in 1971, titled Fushigina Medomo. Tezuka seriously loved killing off characters, so Medomo got her magical powers when her mother is killed in an automobile accident and manages to convince a bunch of guys up in heaven dressed like Colonel Sanders to give her some magic candy. She then takes the candy down to her daughter on Earth, and obviously the candy is magical. Blue candy to age 10 years and red to go back 10 years. Eat both of them and she could turn into a fetus, which could become any kind of animal she wanted to, because that's how fetuses work? It isn't actually, which is kind of disturbing since apparently Tezuka thought of the anime as a good opportunity to provide some much needed introductory sexual education. Medomo may have also been one of the first anime to feature what we'd now call fan service. Probably goes without saying that parents weren't big fans of this anime since it forced them to have some uncomfortable conversations about the birds and the bees with their kids. Also, adult men chasing down Medomo for her good looks when she's a 9-year-old masquerading in a 19-year-old's body is a little uncomfortable. Premiering the day after Medomo in October 1971 was another Toei magical girl series, Sarutobi Action, based on the manga Okashina 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 Anoko by Shotaro Ishinomori, another manga luminaire of the era who also created Super Sentai, which was localized in the US as Power Rangers. The basic premise is Ek-chan is a descendant of the famous ninja of Japanese folklore, Sarutobi Sasuke. It is up to you whether or not you think superhuman strength and ninja techniques qualify as magic, but she also makes a pigeon appear from under a handkerchief, and that's magic in my books. Ek-chan is another slice of life type magical girl series, which is mostly remarkable since it might have the first talking animal mascot. The year 1972 brought Maho Sky Chappie, yet another Toei magical girl series, probably most popularly known for being almost exactly the same anime as Toei's Sally the Witch. Same premise, events, almost the entire first episode, Disney references, characters, and even their voice actors. It's like a living, breathing, can I copy your homework meme, but I guess you don't have to worry about a lawsuit from your own studio. Just click that card in the corner to take you back to the Sally timestamp if you'd like a summary of the series. But I have to give Chappie credit for bringing wands into the magical girl game. 1973 was the year that magical girls got high tech, with 2 cybernetic magical girl series destined to cross wires in Mortal Kombat. Toei had 2 upcoming magical girl series competing for the TV Asahi time slot typically reserved for magical shows set to open up in October. Miracle Shoujo Limito-chan, or Miracle Girl Limit-chan, and the series being produced in collaboration with the anime trope master himself, Go Nagai, called Cutie Honey. Limit-chan ultimately won the magical time slot, despite its plot being straight out of RoboCop, or maybe Astro Boy, with its protagonist suffering a fatal injury in a plane crash and her genius father building her a robot body to save her life. The setup was along the lines of a traditional fare for that era, with the series falling into episodic slice of life where Limit-chan would use her robot powers to solve everyday problems for her friends and family. Cutie Honey was originally conceived by Nagai's desire to make a story featuring a hero with 7 transformations. The original concept was aiming for a shoujo audience with plans to establish the accompanying manga in the shoujo magazine Ribbon, complete with a line of costume-changing honey dolls. When they didn't get the time slot, the story was retooled further to appeal to a shonen audience, making it the first magical girl series written with boys in mind. It included a lot more fighting and became a lot more horny, switching its magazine to Weekly Shonen Champion and broadcasting on the Shonen Majikaijin Dai Henshin time slot, which previously aired Nagai's Devilman. The resulting honey was a Catholic schoolgirl, come on Nagai, goddamn, who discovered she's actually an android built by her father containing a device that can transform air into other matter. When her father is murdered by a criminal organization called Panther Claw, Honey goes on a quest to track down his killers, utilizing her biker, stewardess, model, singer, camera woman, and sword-wielding heroine forms. Also, Nagai's a pretty horny dude, and the series was famously racy, so the nudity was definitely intended. Limit and Honey both used their robot powers to change their appearance in a sequence, but Limit's included the background becoming a screen of scintillating light, and Honey's has an incantation with Honey Flash, a choreographed movement, and a musical theme. Put together, they would make what we'd recognize as a traditional magical girl transformation. Honey was also the first magical girl to kick some ass. Other magical girls got into scuffs, but not with the frequency and intensity of Honey. She had combat-specific transformations and was on a quest for revenge against a criminal organization, making her the first fighting magical girl. Cutie Honey may have lost the time slot, but definitely had a greater cultural impact of the 2 series, probably getting more manga and anime spin-offs than even many of the much recreated series in this timeline. The 90s series Cutie Honey Flash even attempted to tell a story much closer to the original shoujo origin of the series. Most devastating was Limit-chan getting snubbed in the Toei magical girl crossover fighting game Majiko Daisakusen Little Witching Mischiefs. Next year, 1974, brought Majiko no Megu-chan. If you think Madoka was the first dark magical girl series, Megu-chan's got Madoka beat by like 40 years. In addition to having an evil magical girl rival, the series just generally got into some dark territory with subplots about domestic abuse, suicide, and adultery. Megu also had a few stalkers that were constantly trying to sneak peeks under her skirt or catch her in her nightgown. Megu-chan didn't really do anything new visually with the medium, but set up a template that many magical girl series would later follow. Megu-chan had to face off against monsters and other witches, but many of the greatest conflicts in the series were the results of her interaction with normal characters, suffering from real-life stress or personal tragedy. In 1979 came Hana no Ko Lunlun, a magical girl series set in France. Lunlun is a normal girl who is the destined flower child, set on a quest to save the magical flower star, where forest spirits fled when human greed and consumption set them out of balance with nature. To do so, she must find the magic flower and is given a magic pin that lets her change into different outfits that help her on a journey. Lunlun's greatest contribution to the genre came in talking mascot animals in Nouveau and Cateur as the talking cat and dog sent from the Flower Kingdom. Not only do we see other characters communicating with them, implying they can actually talk, but the two also mentor Lunlun. 1980 then saw Maho Shoujo Lalabelle, the story of a magical girl who is accidentally transported from her world to ours along with a thief Biscus. She's taken in by a Japanese family and decides to stay in our world until she can capture Biscus and take them both back. Don't really have much to say about this one, except its title was the first usage of Maho Shoujo, after which that term entered popular usage over Majiko. Lalabelle also marked the end of the Toei period of magical girls. The studio wouldn't produce another magical girl anime until 1998, and wouldn't start up a new magical girl anime until a certain important series in 1992. Why? Magical Girl had been a reliable cash cow for Toei, but they were starting to believe their target demographic of young girls was more interested in romance than magic. They were extremely wrong. The very next magical girl to appear on the scene in 1982 is magical girl Minky Momo, the biggest magical girl yet. It didn't really innovate with the formula, although it was a good comedy series in its own right that utilized Momo's magic to make tons of anime and pop culture references. I'm mostly including it in this list because I want to discuss how absolutely cursed it was. First, some background. Minky Momo was one of the first magical girls since Teske's Merumo that attempted to wrest the genre from the iron grips of Toei Animation. Made by Ashi Productions in conjunction with the toy manufacturer Poppy to sell a ton of merchandise, Minky Momo is kind of a combination of all the magical girls that came before her. A younger girl visiting our world from a magical kingdom, like Sally and Mego-chan, and using her candy cane looking magic stick, she can turn into an adult like Merumo, but also adopting one of the number of professions, like a veterinarian or stewardess to solve problems, like Cutie Honey. Momo just had one big problem. Despite the huge popularity, the toys weren't selling. This might have been because the audience for the show wasn't quite the young girls the show creator had intended. Maybe it was the frequent reference to other popular anime. But Momo developed a huge fandom with older males. Nowadays is created as being one of the first anime to launch the Lolicon fandom. So, yeah. Anyway, so they weren't pushing any toys. So Poppy pulled their funding and left Ashi in the lurch. So, in retaliation, the staff killed Momo. Yes, in episode 46, Momo had lost her magic and she tries to save a young girl from getting hit by a speeding toy truck. She saves the girl but is struck herself and killed. The toy company pulled funding, so Momo got killed by a truck full of toys. Not subtle at all. But don't take my word for it. Series writer Takeshi Shudo penned an open letter in Out magazine, basically stating that Poppy couldn't sell its awful toys, so it screwed them and Momos Death was on their sour grapes. Shame on you, Poppy. Turns out you've got a pretty big problem on your hands when you suddenly killed off the magical girl in your hit magical girl anime in episode 46 when it was greenlit for 63. Ashi brought Minky Momo back from the dead with a resurrection subplot to finish the run, but then, as the last episode was airing on May 26, 1983, the historic Sea of Japan earthquake struck. That's some real dark magical girl shit. Now, the one big innovation Minky Momo brought into the scene was crossovers. But magical girl crossovers were all the rage in the 80s. Many of the Momo's OVAs featured other popular magical girls, such as Magical Angel Creamy Mami, who first aired in 1983 and represented a lot of the firsts in magical girl genres. She was the first idol magical girl and the first magical girl ever by Studio Pierre, and the beginning of what would become known as the Pierre period. The story of Magical Angel Creamy Mami revolves around a 10-year-old Yu Morisawa who comes across a UFO and helps the magical alien inside, who gives her a magic wand that lets her turn into a 16-year-old, and two cats to make sure she doesn't go too nuts with their new magical powers. Creamy Mami upped the transformation game as well. Her older persona ends up singing on TV and she becomes an overnight success as an idol under the alias Mami. This would be the start of what's known as the media mix movement, which has grown into a marketing chimera of cross-medium promotions but started out as a relic of the 80s magical girl anime. Basically, this is how it works. The studio got the upcoming real-life idol Takano Ota to voice the main character Mami. She sang all the songs in the anime and wrote and performed the opening theme, all of which were released in the real world. Ota and Mami mutually benefited from each other's popularity to build a huge name recognition. This formula was copied a ton during this era and quickly moved out of the magical girl genre to pure idol anime, and adjacent works like Full Moon or Sagashite. Idolmaster and Love Live are also huge in Japan, and the upcoming Nanabun no Nijuni anime featuring my girl Sally Amaki follows a similar formula. Pierre went absolutely nuts with magical girls in the 80s, following up Mami with Magical Emmy, Persia, and Pastel Yumi, then throwing them all together in the huge crossover OVA Aretsu ga Tamaho no Sannin Musume and Majoko Club Yoningumi Akukan Kara no Alien X, which were technically the first team-ups in magical girl history. Mami even faced off against Minky Momo in Maho no Tenshin Creamy Mami vs Maho no Princess Minky Momo Gekijo no Daikessen, which might be the only magical girl head-to-head ever and the most ambitious crossover in history, since the two characters weren't even from the same studio. And Jesus, those names are long as All these team-ups would have been an appetizer before the Magical Girl Squad, which would change the game and the world forever. In an anime that premiered in 1992 based off the manga by the legendary Naoko Takeuchi, Sailor Moon. Toei returned to the Magical Girl series with a boom. Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon probably has the most firsts of any title in the genre. The story of the resurrected Moon Princess Tsukino Usagi fighting the forces of evil with her 4 best friends and a dapper guy that throws flowers completely changed the Magical Girl game. And Takeuchi pulled it off by pulling inspiration from the most unlikely places, an entirely unrelated genre of popular media in Japan. Tokusatsu. That's right, I'm talking about Sentai, baby. By now, Super Sentai had been tearing it up for years and was hugely popular in Japan. Takeuchi borrowed its color-coded outfits, storytelling conventions, villains, and elaborate posing for squad glamour shots to help her shoujo series about 5 girls defending the Earth from evil gem-inspired villains. Where Mami's crossover had put magical girls together, the Sailor Scouts were designed as a coordinate squad, both to fight evil as a unit and bounce off one another narratively. The combination of Monsters of the Week storytelling, diverse personal coming-of-age narratives, the power of their feeling, and the strength of their friendship transforming into actual power was all the perfect recipe. Sailor Moon landed in 1992 and was an insane hit, selling millions in toys in its first year and putting on the fast track for every anime licensor on the planet. Today, it's one of the top 50 highest grossing media franchises in history with an estimated $14.3 billion in total revenue. Fun fact, the fishy magical girl SpongeBob SquarePants just recently made more money than Sailor Moon. Basically, can't say enough about how much Sailor Moon set the standard for future Magical Girl series. After Sailor Moon, Magical Girl series almost universally featured Magical Girl teams using their powers to fight off some sort of extra-dimensional evil. It also had the first true Magical Girl transformations, or at least as we know them now. Rushing lights, hit the music, girl is naked, but there's light so it's still PG, and outfit appearing in sections on the character, one piece at a time, using recycled animation that never gets boring, no matter how many times you watch it. Another area where Sailor Moon changed not only the Magical Girl game, but the global reputation of anime was by introducing a huge amount of LGBTQ representation into what had become an international mega hit. You got gay villains, a trans villain, and an openly lesbian couple, and no amounts of cousining could hide the truth from fans. This had a huge influence not just on Magical Girl series, but anime as a medium. The amount of LGBTQ coding and themes pre and post Sailor Moon isn't even comparable. But I saved the best for last. The craziest first Sailor Moon landed in the history of Magical Girls is that it's the first to have a female creator. Yes, 30 years of Magical Girl anime and every single one was either from a manga written by a man or, more often, an original anime conceived by the production studio. Okay, so let's keep this rolling. Next up, we got another Magical Girl mega hit in Cardcaptor Sakura in 1998, the brainchild of the all-female manga circle, Clamp. Elementary schooler Kinamoto Sakura finds an old dusty book in her basement that holds within it the mystical Clow cards. When she opens it, they fly to the 4 winds and start causing havoc. Their guardian Keroberos gives Sakura a magic key that allows her to seal their magic back into a card, and Sakura's unnerving intense friend Tomoyo pressures her into collecting them so she can do costuming and film the entire thing. Tomoyo, you were always a weird girl. It's hard to pick out anything Cardcaptor really revolutionized so much as it capitalized and played with many of the strengths of the genre. First of all, the merchandising opportunities with all of the Sakura's outfits, the key, Keroberos, and an entire deck of cards? Clamp really knows what they're doing. The high production values of Madhouse in its prime sent the anime skating right on the heels of Sailor Moon to international success that made it clear Sailor Moon wasn't a one-off success. Magical Girls are a serious business. The very late 1990s and early 2000s are what I like to call the Toei redemption arc. They'd proven they have still major Magical Girl chops with Sailor Moon, but they would launch 2 more hugely successful franchises using Magical Girls in 2 very different ways. First was another project by Toei, Ojamajo Doremi in 1999. A frankly genius take on the Magical Girl genre, if you ask me, and no, nobody has asked me. It plays the genre back down to elementary school kids with a simplified and colorful cartoony style. It had the components of a Magical Girl story where a titular Doremi is forced to become a magical girl to learn how to undo a curse, which she accidentally cast on a kid witch that turned her into a frog. But that was really just a setup for a school slice-of-life comedy series about a group of friends who happened to have magical abilities. The formula had a broad Saturday morning cartoon-like audience appeal that could entertain both kids and parents, and 2 years after it appeared in the top 50 of TV Asahi's 2005 online popularity poll, proof that magical girls had a lot of flexibility as a genre. Maybe no series tested the limits of magical girl harder though than 2002's Princess Tutu, the brainchild of character designer, animation director, and Sailor Moon alumni Ikuko Ito, that beat a certain popular magical girl anime to being dark and destructive by nearly a decade. It's about a duck named Duck who can turn into a ballerina. This series used fairy tale tropes to step back and look at the act of storytelling itself, the nature of canon, and the relationship we have with stories. Deep stuff. Duck didn't so much fight bad guys as get in high-stake interpretive dance-offs with individuals who had their personal angst infected by some seriously bad vibes as a bigger meta-narrative about death of the author played overhead. The series was nominally successful but has received a lot of critical acclaim in retrospect for its artistic ambition. Magical Girls could now also be high art. In 2004, Toei launched the anime original series Futari wa Pretty Cure, focusing on Nagisa Misumi and Honoka Yukishiro, who were approached by mentor mascot Mipple and Mepple and given the power to transform into Cure Black and Cure White to fight the evil forces of the Dark Zone. The series had all the mainstays of Magical Girls set up by Sailor Moon, except rather than using mostly recycled animations of sparkly rays of light to defeat their enemies, these girls kick some serious ass. Using martial arts and magical super strength sufficient to put boot prints in metal or jump into the stratosphere, they beat up villains who usually look like ripped glam rockers in skin-tight bodysuits. The series did well, but got diminishing interest, so it was relaunched in 2007 as Yes, Pretty Cure, with all the same elements but a different cast of characters, and again as Pretty Cure in 2009. The series became a lasting franchise that launches a new generation every year, recently celebrating its 15th anniversary with 15 generations of Magical Girls and almost 800 combined episodes to its name. The components of Magical Girl stories had grown so iconic that they could basically be adapted into any genre piecemeal and remain recognizable. Imaishi had long been a fan of that, making his raunchy comedy Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt on the way out of the door from Gainax, in which the two lead angels use an elaborate pole dancing transformation scene to turn their unmentionable into deadly weapons. Trigger's first TV anime, Kill la Kill, also borrowed heavily from Magical Girls in what was essentially a high school combat series that somehow ended up in space. And in case you're wondering, no, I don't consider Little Witch Academia Magical Girl. They all go to a witch school and they don't transform. It's more like if Harry Potter is a genre. If Little Witch is a magical girl, then you know I gotta call Nejima Magical Girl as well. Do you want me to do that? You know what? I'll do that. Nejima is a magical girl. Now, the part you've probably all been waiting for, when magical girls became dark. In 2001, a group of creators known as the Magical Quintet came together to produce Puella Magi Madoka Magica, performing a classic anime bait and switch that makes its audience lose their heads? Where Princess Tutu attempted to deconstruct storytelling as a larger art, Madoka had laser focused on the genre itself, pulling apart the genre tropes that we, the audience, took for granted. Spoiler alert, skip to skip a spoiler for a 9-year-old series. Now, the girls' blind trust in the mascot character who had granted them powers turned out to be misplaced, as he was using them as an end to his own means. The now typical role of the power and innocence of the magical girl feelings and their bonds of friendship serving them as the source of their power was turned on its head, with what may have been a criticism of the industry at large, as their naivety ultimately led to their self-destruction as their emotions were being commodified by the untrustworthy paternal mascot character. It was also a gorgeous anime. Shaft put their name on the map by pulling out all the stops with Shimbo's crazy visual style, using a variety of techniques to perfectly set the paranoid tone of the series and give the villains an otherworldly feeling. Mwah! Delicioso. Now, Madoka was huge. It launched writer Gen Urobichi's career into orbit, and while far from the first, Madoka inspired an entire generation of dark magical girl series looking to take the bright, innocent, and optimistic tones of the genre and twist them up into more bleak and edgy tales. Madoka's stratospheric popularity is one of the two things it has common with Sailor Moon, the other being its heavy influence from tokusatsu. Gen Urobuchi has admitted in interviews that Madoka was inspired by Kamen Rider Ryuki, right down to the infinitely resetting time to save a loved one. So I'm gonna call this the Dark Magical Girl period. In 2012, we got another take on magical girls, a major callback to its early idol period of the 80s. It's called Sankey Session Symphogear. Story is that idols are recruited into an international military organization which use ancient weapons known as symphogears to harness the harmonic power of their voices and transform it into combat prowess to fight Bavarian alchemist. Yeah, they literally sing about kicking your ass to make their ass kicking even more powerful. 10 out of 10. Mwah. Having their weaponry based in technology just as much as magic also gives the series free license to put the magical girls in pseudo-mech suits, complete with laser cannons and jetpacks. Each girl also has their own genre of music. The series just ended its run in 2019 with its 5th season. The series has sold a ton of music, bringing in famous voice actresses to show off their musical chops, singing their character songs, and also entered the gacha market with a new mobile game. Then came the new Dark Magical Girl series starting in 2014 with Yuki Yuna is a Hero, the story of a school hero club who gains the ability to transform into magical girls through a phone app so they can protect their reality from the extra-dimensional threat of the alien Vertex. Using their powers begin to eat away at the girls' bodies, which will eventually render them paralyzed or even cause death. Some critics have said the conflict works as an allegory for PTSD, but the series pushes the personal sacrifices the girls are making, even if just in not being able to study because they're fighting so hard to ensure that their teacher is still there tomorrow to chew them out for not doing their homework. Another more literal take on this appeared in 2019's Magical Girl Spec Ops Asuka, which looked at the magical girls through a lens of a child soldier, in which after the evil world threat was defeated, governments still continued to exploit magical girls to achieve military supremacy. What a weird sentence I just said. Then there are some series which are just dark. Magical Girl Raising Project in 2016 basically set magical girls against each other in a battle royale setting, and 2019's Magical Girl site is like Hell Girl of Magical Girl series, with the protagonist, Aya Sagiri, being given magical powers from a mysterious online benefactor to get back against her school bullies and abusive older brother. Basically, it's really dark right now. I would love some pastel colors and uplifting speech about the power of friendship right about now, please. Luckily, it's not all doom and gloom right now, though. We recently got the super bizarre Magical Girl Ore, a tongue-in-cheek comedy where girls sign shady back alley contracts with Yakuza-like mascots to turn into beautifully dressed male bodybuilders that can crush the unnervingly cute, muscly demonic invaders. And Noelle recently powered up in Black Clover with her new spell using a pretty familiar transformation sequence. Also, another season of Sailor Moon Crystal is on its way in 2020, and the recent conclusion of many flagship franchises leaves open ground for a new series to break into the market. Whew, that is the history, the long history of magical girls. Thank you everyone so much for watching this, and please check out all these magical girl series that we have in our library and Crunchyroll.com. Be sure to subscribe, like, and press that magical bell icon. Hime Hime, signing out.